My dear friends, welcome back to Meghan and Harry Tales. I'm Adrian, and today we need to have an honest, unflinching conversation about something that has been eating away at me for months. It's about Prince Harry, his remarkable legacy of service, and the systematic, calculated campaigns that continue to undermine him, not for any noble cause, not for the betterment of charity work, but purely to feed one man's insatiable ego, Prince William. What we're witnessing isn't just sibling rivalry. This isn't a case of two brothers having different approaches to royal duty. No, friends, this is something far more sinister. This is the deliberate dismantling of a man's life's work, orchestrated from the very institution that should be protecting him. Let me take you back to last year, when we witnessed the first major salvo in this ongoing war. You may recall the orchestrated attempt to push Harry out of his role on the board of African Parks, a highly respected NGO that has been at the forefront of conserving African ecosystems and protecting wildlife for decades. Now, here's what makes this particularly galling. Harry didn't just wake up one day and decide to care about conservation. This man has been passionately involved in African wildlife protection for years, long before it became fashionable for royals to pose with elephants for photo ops. Harry was there in Botswana as a teenager, finding solace and purpose in the vast wilderness. He was there learning from local conservationists, understanding the complex challenges facing African wildlife, and building genuine relationships with communities. Yet, suddenly, out of nowhere, stories began appearing in the British press questioning Harry's qualifications, his commitment, even his very right to sit on that board. Anonymous sources, always anonymous, began whispering about concerns and questions about Harry's role. But here's the smoking gun, friends. These stories appeared in very specific outlets written by very specific journalists, all of whom have well-documented connections to Kensington Palace. The timing, the language, even the specific criticisms, it all bore the unmistakable hallmarks of a coordinated briefing campaign. And let's be absolutely clear about what this was really about. This was never about African Park's effectiveness or Harry's qualifications. This was about William looking at his brother's meaningful, impactful work and feeling diminished by comparison. While Harry was getting his hands dirty in real conservation work, William was launching yet another environmental initiative that would quietly fade into obscurity within months. Fast forward to this year, and we saw the exact same playbook deployed against Sentebale and friends. This one cut particularly deep because of what Sentebale represents. Harry co-founded this charity in Lesotho nearly 20 years ago, when he was barely out of his teens. This wasn't some royal photo opportunity or a patronage handed down by tradition. Harry saw the devastating impact of HIV and AIDS on children and young people in Lesotho, and he didn't just write a cheque or show up for a ribbon-cutting ceremony. He rolled up his sleeves and built something from the ground up. I remember watching footage of a young Harry sitting on the floor of a care centre, playing games with HIV-positive children who had been abandoned by their families. No cameras, no press pack, just a young man who saw suffering and decided to do something about it. Sentebale has grown into one of the most effective charities working in southern Africa, directly impacting thousands of young lives. Their mobile testing units, their support programs, their advocacy work, it's all been groundbreaking. So when stories suddenly began circulating about management failures and financial problems at Sentebale, my blood began to boil. Because once again, when you followed the breadcrumbs, when you looked at the sources, when you examined the timing, there were William's fingerprints all over it. The same journalists, the same anonymous palace sources, the same coordinated whisper campaign designed to undermine Harry's reputation as a philanthropist. And what made it even more despicable was that they were using vulnerable children with HIV as pawns in their petty game of royal politics. Friends, we need to pause here and really understand what we're dealing with, because this pattern didn't start with African Parks or Sentebale. This has been William's modus operandi for years. Look at his own charitable work. I challenge you to name one significant, lasting impact from any of William's patronages. The Earthshot Prize, launched with great fanfare, lots of celebrity appearances, and then silence. Where are the follow-up stories? Where are the success stories of environmental innovations it's supposed to be funding? His mental health initiatives? Again, Big launches, royal endorsements, and then they quietly disappear from public discourse while other organisations, often ones connected to Harry and Meghan, continue doing the real work. And here's what's particularly insidious about William's approach. He doesn't actually want to do the hard work of charity leadership. He wants the credit, the acclaim, the positive press coverage, but without the commitment, without the genuine emotional investment that real philanthropic work requires. So when William sees Harry, his younger brother, creating something meaningful, something that actually works, something that gets genuine praise and recognition, he can't stand it. Rather than being inspired to work harder on his own projects, rather than supporting Harry's success for the greater good, he chooses sabotage. And the palace machine, ever eager to please the future king, falls in line. Suddenly, briefing notes go out to favoured journalists. Whisper campaigns begin. Anonymous sources start raising concerns. It's a well-oiled machine of destruction, and Harry has been its primary target for years. Which brings us to the present moment, friends, and what I believe is William's most audacious, most morally bankrupt move yet, his apparent targeting of the Invictus Games. When Richard Eden of the Daily Mail recently wrote that column suggesting Invictus would have no trouble finding a new royal patron if Harry were to resign, I felt physically ill. Not just because of the obvious implications, but because of what the Invictus Games represents. Let me paint you a picture of how Invictus was born. Harry returned from Afghanistan a changed man. He'd served 2 tours, he'd been in active combat, he'd seen friends wounded and killed. He came back with what we now recognise as trauma, struggling with his mental health, struggling to find his place in a world that seemed trivial compared to the life and death situations he'd left behind. It was during this dark period that Harry encountered the Warrior Games in the United States, an event where wounded American servicemen and women competed in adaptive sports, and something clicked. Harry saw how competition, how sport, how the simple act of striving for excellence could transform broken spirits into champions. But Harry didn't just attend the Warrior Games and think, "That's nice." He came home and spent months, years even, developing his vision for something bigger. He researched adaptive sports programs. He met with veterans organizations. He studied the psychological and social benefits of competitive sport for wounded warriors. When the first Invictus Games launched in London in 2014, it wasn't just another royal event, it was Harry's baby, his vision made manifest. He was there in the early morning setting up equipment. He was there late at night talking with veterans and their families. He didn't just show up for the opening ceremony, he lived and breathed every moment of those games. And look at what Invictus has become. It's not just a sporting event, it's a global movement that has fundamentally changed how society views wounded veterans. Instead of objects of pity, these men and women are celebrated as the champions they truly are. Now let's imagine for a moment that William somehow succeeds in his apparent plan to take over Invictus. Let's play out that scenario, friends, because I think it reveals just how hollow and self-defeating this entire campaign really is. Picture William showing up at an Invictus Games as the new patron. What do you think happens? Do you think the veterans don't notice? Do you think the families of wounded servicemen and women don't understand exactly what's happened? These are people who have sacrificed everything for their countries. They understand loyalty, they understand brotherhood, and they absolutely understand betrayal. They know who stood with them from the beginning, and they know who's trying to capitalize on their struggles for personal gain. William has never served in active combat. He's never been in a situation where his life depended on the person next to him. He's never had to carry a wounded comrade to safety or write letters to the families of fallen friends. That's not a criticism of William's service record. Not everyone can serve in combat roles. But it is a recognition of why Harry's connection to these veterans is something that cannot be replicated or transferred. More fundamentally, William simply doesn't have the work ethic for Invictus. This is an event that requires year-round commitment, constant fundraising, endless coordination with veterans organizations around the world. It requires someone willing to travel to military hospitals, to sit with grieving families, to celebrate small victories and mourn devastating losses. Does anyone at all, believe that William has that kind of dedication? His own patronages are littered with abandoned initiatives and forgotten promises. The idea that he could step into Harry's shoes at Invictus isn't just insulting, it's laughably unrealistic. Friends, we need to step back and understand that this is about something much larger than patronages or charitable roles. This is about legacy, about purpose, about what it means to dedicate your life to service. Harry chose a different path, not just when he stepped back from royal duties, but long before that. While his contemporaries were focused on social climbing and maintaining their privileged positions, Harry was in Afghanistan, serving alongside men and women from all walks of life. While other royals were cutting ribbons, Harry was sitting with HIV-positive children in Lesotho, learning their names, hearing their stories. That service, that genuine commitment to causes bigger than himself, that's not something you can fake or steal. It's not something you can acquire through a palace briefing or a well-placed news story. And here's what William and his supporters fundamentally don't understand. The people Harry serves know the difference. The veterans at Invictus don't care about royal titles or succession plans. They care about who shows up, who listens, who remembers their names from year to year. The children and families served by Sentebale don't care about palace politics. They care about who actually improves their lives, who brings resources and attention to their struggles. The conservationists working with African parks don't care about royal rivalries. They care about who does the work, who makes the difficult decisions, who stands with them when the cameras aren't rolling. And all of these people, veterans, families, conservationists, charity workers around the world, they know who Harry really is. They know his heart, his commitment, his authenticity, and that knowledge, that relationship, that trust, it cannot be transferred or stolen, no matter how sophisticated the smear campaign. So yes, friends, these attacks may continue. We may see more attempts to strip Harry of the work he loves, more whisper campaigns designed to diminish his reputation, more palace briefings aimed at rewriting history. But I want to leave you with this thought. History will remember who did the work. History will remember who showed up not when it was convenient, but when it was necessary. History will remember who chose service over comfort, authenticity over image management, genuine impact over hollow ceremony. Harry's legacy isn't built on press clippings or palace approval. It's built on changed lives, on veterans who found hope through Invictus, on children in Lesotho who received life-saving treatment through Sentebale, on wildlife protected through African parks. That legacy built through years of genuine service, sustained by real relationships, and proven through tangible impact, that's something no smear campaign can touch. No palace briefing can diminish it. No jealous sibling can steal it. The truth, friends, always has a way of rising to the surface. And the truth about Prince Harry's dedication to service, his authentic commitment to the causes he champions, and the real impact of his work, that truth is unshakable. This is Adrian, and thank you for joining me for this extended episode of Meghan and Harry Tale. If you believe in Harry's work, if you stand against these coordinated attacks on his legacy, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay strong, keep fighting for truth. And remember, genuine service speaks louder than any palace propaganda.